That means the headline price on a lot of goods and services is set to increase over the next few years as that carbon price goes up. But for most households, they will get a lot of that increase in prices back through their income tax return.
I'm Natalie Nanowski. Welcome back to the Midweek Exchange, the show where we break down those big economic issues and explain how they could impact your life. As always, I'm joined by Brett House, Scotiabank's VP and Deputy Chief Economist. Hi, Brett.
Hey, Natalie, good to see you again.
Good to see you too. So, one of the things we're looking at is Canadian officials are heading to the UN Climate Change Conference, and that starts on Sunday. Canada has a lot of promises. It's making everything from doubling its contributions to poor countries to raising emission reduction targets. But what does this all mean for the average Canadian household?
Well, we're going to see on Sunday a 2 week conference kickoff called COP26, which is the Committee of the Parties to the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change. And that's a mouthful. The quick way to think about this is that it's the 5 year sequel to the Paris Agreement that was struck at the last big meeting of this group of countries in Paris in 2015. Now, the big implications for households are mainly at the level of prices for different things that we consume and services that we use. We're all aware that carbon pricing has been something introduced in recent years. Now, that means the headline price on a lot of goods and services is set to increase over the next few years as that carbon price goes up. But for most households, they will get a lot of that increase in prices back through their income tax return. And that's designed to try to incentivize people to use more carbon neutral or carbon decarbonized goods and services that have less of an impact on the environment. The other thing we're likely to see is continued spending over the next few years by the federal and provincial governments. And with the cabinet being named this week, we'll probably see some new announcements about how the federal and provincial governments are going to be using their spending to help households support changes to the way they heat, to make their windows and insulation more efficient, to use more fuel efficient cars, and other aspects of life where there are going to be federal tax credits and spending to help households make that transition.
Okay, great. And I guess the other thing I want to talk to you about that directly affects the Canadian economy right now is Ontario and BC. They lifted capacity limits this week, allowing many venues to operate at full capacity. So these are two huge economies, two big provinces. What does this mean for Canada?
Well, it means the really high growth rates that we're anticipating to see out 2021 and carry into 2022 are likely to be realized because the real lags on economic growth, the drags that have been holding it back, are largely focused in the service sectors that are being fully reopened. And that's going to mean that it's still difficult, though, to get a table in a restaurant or on a patio or a spot in a gym class because those are areas that are still having trouble getting people back into jobs and hiring for the kind of demand that they're seeing.
Right. I can tell you, I've been to a few restaurants and many of them weren't able to serve me just because they don't have the staff to do it.
That's right. And you're seeing that across the Canadian economy, not just in Ontario and BC.
Okay. So looking forward to next week, what should we keep our eye on?
Well, I think we should be watching what happens with the conference in Glasgow for new announcements from the Canadian government on exactly what it will do to realize those commitments to take the Canadian economy to net zero carbon emissions by 2050. That's going to mean initiatives for both business and households that can make that transition easier and more affordable.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Brett.
Good to talk with you.
Good to speak with you too. And we'll have more midweek exchange coming up next Wednesday.